Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're calling in from. This is Matt from The Truman Show, or just Matt with Axiomatics, whatever. I am happy to be continuing on our regular scheduled webinars. Today is kind of a fun one. We're going to be talking about why hackers hate Axiomatics. Joining me today, I've got myself, far from Mr. Robot. If anybody's watched the TV show. Joining me today is unfortunately not David Brossard. He's continuing to fuel up on Zen, but I've also got Anonymous, our Hacker Supreme. Just kidding. We're actually joined by Kyle, who might not be our Hacker Supreme, which I'm happy to hear because he's not in jail. But he is hacker educated. So glad to have you here, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, it should be a fun conversation. So when we talk of hackers, or when we think of hackers, I don't know about a lot of you, but I grew up on, the old school hackers type reality. These people, putting on funny glasses, logging in from 5 different computers. Their mainframes were, they looked like little mini cities. But the reality is hacking is not this. It's not about, breaking the code, getting in and stealing everything. The reality is more like this. And I'm going to just mute myself for a second. I think this is a really great quick video of what hacking actually looks like. So we'll go through this. Kyle, let me know if there's audio loop back on my side.
All right.
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
at gmail.com.
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right. Thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you.
Feels like a good spot to pause and take a break. But I think this is a great example of the fact that, hacking, again, going back to what we think of in the world of, TV, computers, is just logging into the system, cracking the code, going through a command prompt. It's almost laughable. But the reality is it's a lot more of that social engineering, working the person, getting details from them, getting information so that you're able to start getting more and more access, more and more details so that you can get in and start stealing information. And that's what I want to talk about today. So when we think of hackers or when we talk about hackers, there's a lot of different attack vectors they go through. These are 7 of the most common ones. It's not the only ones, but today I want to focus in on the 5 main ways that Axiomatics with attribute-based access controls can actually help defend against those hackers. I'm not going to say it is going to be the foolproof method, but really what it does is it adds that next layer in your arsenal to protect you and your business from those outside or even inside threats. And there's a lot going on this slide, but I'm gonna take a few seconds to kind of walk us through it. And really, everything starts right up here at the top center of the page. It's the biggest attack vector is really the user or the device that they're on in order to get access to that information. And what Axiomatics does to help protect that is, rather than the user just going directly into the application, the user is going through some form of a policy enforcement point. And that could be anything like an API gateway, a microservice, whatever it might be. But that policy enforcement point then reaches out to Axiomatics at the decision point. And the decision point says, looking at the policy, looking at who should be able to have access to what information, at that point, look at the attribute sources of the user or of the resource that they're trying to access. And based on all of those things being married up together, Axiomatics is going to send a response back to the enforcement point to say, yes, you're allowed, or no, you're prevented access. Kyle, I'm not sure if there was anything you wanted to add in for this slide.
Whoops. No, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. Yeah, that's authorization in its essence, how it works.
Yeah. So obviously today is about hacking, but we're not going to focus in on how hackers are getting access. What we want to look at is a few different scenarios of users themselves getting access to applications. But then what happens if a user is either trying to impersonate the user or impersonate the device in order to get access to information? How does Axiomatics work within those types of scenarios? So at that point, Kyle, I'm going to hand over slide sharing to you so we can jump right into that.
Sounds good. Yeah, let me go ahead, share my screen. Ooh.
Oh, I know that guy. That's Daniel.
Yeah, so we're going to run through just a sample user, but let's talk about a user that might be being used at the company. So Daniel might be an employee at a company such as Acme Corp or a company like that, and Daniel is your standard user. He has valid credentials. He's a manager within the company. He's trained to work on approving and denying purchase orders for employees within his region. The region he works in is the EMEA region. He has a trusted device, and he works from 9 to 5. Pretty standard stuff. These are all attributes that we're leveraging about Daniel to actually do the authorization on, and how we securely make sure Daniel only has access to the actions and data that he needs at the time that he needs it. But is this really Daniel? That's the real question. How do we know for sure it's Daniel? Well, let's say Daniel got his credentials stolen through an email of some sort, or he clicked on a suspicious link, and now our anonymous hacker now has Daniel's credentials. What can this hacker actually do? So he has his valid credentials. He still has the attribute of, because he has his credentials, that he is Daniel. So he's a manager. He's trained to work on purchase orders. Says he works in the EMEA region. But does he have that trusted device that Daniel is working on originally? So Daniel might have some endpoint protection on his computer, might have some sort of MAC address that the hacker doesn't know about, things like that. And we can actually use that information to secure Daniel's identity within Axiomatics when we're doing authorization requests. So a way we can simulate that is in my, what I'm going to show you is we're going to have two different browsers. So think of each browser as, instead of one being, because I don't have two devices here to demonstrate this, think of the different browsers as the different devices. And we're actually leveraging what browser we're accessing the website and from as an attribute within policy. So here I'm in Google Chrome, and I have Daniel's credentials. So when I log in to this purchase order app, you can see everything shows up perfectly fine. I can go to the purchase orders. I can manage these purchase orders. I can create a purchase order. I can go to my suppliers. I can view my suppliers. Perfectly fine. Daniel can do everything he needs to do from his trusted device during work hours in the Google Chrome trusted device. Now, if I log out and I switch over here to Firefox, this anonymous hacker, his device is going to be simulated as the Firefox device. And when I'm actually logging in, I'm taking that, identifying information about the user's environment. And based off of the user's environment, I'm actually changing the way the website looks because of additional attributes that we can leverage in policy. And I'm going to show you with Firefox, but this can be any attribute about your environment, anything at all, your IP, where you're currently located, that you can determine from your connection to Axiomatics, whether there is endpoint protection software, as we said, MAC address information, anything like that you can determine from a browser session, any fingerprinting information we can use in policy. So when I log in as Daniel here, you'll see Daniel doesn't have as much access as he did before. You can still see the main page and everything, but everything's showing up denies on his side of the computer. So because this isn't really Daniel, this is the anonymous hacker. And this is just a part of the experience that you can expect when you design your policy, in a sense that you're trying to make sure only valid users are using the correct application at the correct time. So,
Kyle, there's an interesting question just popped up, actually.
Sure.
So the question is basically asking, in this example, so obviously the hacker has gotten access to the invalid credentials, or to the valid credentials, excuse me, but their device is not the same. The question is, how do we know that it's not Daniel? Is there a way that we can make it so that Daniel would be able to then get access to set this up as a trusted device?
Yes, there is a way we can set up this as a trusted device. So when, let's say you have the same policy in place, same policy, I'm logging in from this Firefox untrusted device. When I log in, you can trigger an obligation in your policy. So the obligation could be set two-factor authentication. And the obligation would be an additional part of your policy. So once you get to this screen, instead of getting to this screen, it brings you to two-factor authentication, some sort of trusted device whitelist, things that you can actually do to provision this new device. It would bring you to that dashboard, or even give you a, hey, sorry, you can't use this device, email whoever, so-and-so in IT, something like that. So you can, anything, when we're talking about policy in this way, this is what's so beautiful about policy. Anything that you decide that you want to do within your app. As long as you can explain it in a logical sense, you can write it in policy. So if you want to do two-factor authentication, a whitelist, email, you want to automate it somehow with a script or an outsider app that you want to add into your policy, you can. It's all, you have the power to do that.
Excellent. So yeah, it's that ability that you can have it locked down, but at the same time, you can enable the end user to get the access that they need. So you're not getting in the way of the business being able to function, but you are making sure that things are locked down and that you're trusting who that user is based on the credentials that they're using.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thanks.
Great. Well, then I will move on to our next, my next slide here. Okay, great. We deal with the anonymous hacker. But what happens when Daniel is actually the threat? Daniel becomes disgruntled. He wants to be a malicious actor inside the company. He wants to embezzle money or create some sort of fraudulent activity within the company. What the great thing about Axiomatics is it allows you to only give your users what they need to do their job. So Daniel, even if he wanted to do the wrong thing, he can't because of policy. So, and you design your app to only allow your users to do the good case and not let them actually do the bad case, the worst case scenario, with business policies and good policy writing. So if we go back to the valid computer and I log in as Daniel again, you'll see I'm Daniel, but now I'm angry. I want to embezzle money. I want to create a fraudulent activity within the company. So what would you do if you wanted to steal money from the company that's a logistics supplier purchase order app company? So what you would do is you have to go and create a supplier, send that money to some fake company that takes that money and puts it straight in your bank account. Well, Daniel's a manager. He's not a supplier manager or anything like that of that sort. He actually, when he clicks on the suppliers, he can see the suppliers in his region, but he can't see other information about the suppliers. He can just interact with, let's say he has to message these suppliers or something of that sort. He can, but he can't go ahead and create new suppliers. If a user wanted to create new suppliers, they have to be a supplier manager, like Gwen here. So Gwen, I log in as Gwen. Gwen can actually go and create a new supplier and see all the other information about the suppliers. But unlike Daniel, Gwen can't make any purchase orders. She's only a supplier manager. She has a completely different role at the company. Now, if I go back to Daniel and say Daniel even somehow got a new, or he has a, sorry, I have caps lock on. Daniel has some sort of in a different supplier and has some sort of way to get the money out. He just has to make the purchase orders. Well, if we actually go to our purchase orders, we can see Daniel can do the approving and denying of other employees at the company. But if I go to Blue Wave Components and make stealing money.
It's a very discrete purchase order.
You can see when I get to that purchase order, I can't actually go ahead and approve or deny these purchase orders right here, because in policy, a manager can only approve and deny other people's purchase orders. He can't do it to his own. So through good policy writing and through good distributing of roles and abilities throughout the company to keep that checks and balances in place, Daniel isn't even able to do anything illegal or fraudulent because of good policy writing. So this in itself, the nature of authorization itself, deters insider threats and lowers that blast radius, even if you are a valid user.
Yeah, this is actually probably one of my absolute favorite use cases. One, because it's just so simple. And talking to customers who were, before getting involved with Axiomatics, they said, doing this outside of Axiomatics would have required hundreds of different policies. It was very, very complicated. But it's just such a simple use case. It's literally one policy within Axiomatics that says if you created the policy or created the purchase order, you cannot approve your own purchase order. Effectively that. In fact, it is such a simple one, but it has such a high impact. I don't know if anybody watching remembers back in the 90s, Barings Bank. There's a great movie on this. It's called, I believe it's called Rogue Trader with Ewan McGregor. It talks about how this rogue trader goes off the rails, basically starts creating and approving his own trades, and single-handedly brings down Barings Bank. So imagine, the flip side is you've got Kyle here who's creating his own stealing money purchase orders, and over the course of a few weeks, a few months, quite literally steals millions and millions of dollars, bringing down the company. That'd be terrible. So yeah, this is probably one of my favorite ones. Kyle, one of the other questions that's come up so far, how does this differ from role-based access controls?
So this differs from role-based access control in the sense that role-based, you're not able to actually do things such as entitlements, and you're not able to actually determine individual idiosyncrasies between users and the application. Because what happens is you'll have a role for your manager, your employee, and your supplier manager, and there's little nuances within your app that you want to give individual users, but not give as actual roles. But if you're using ABAC and using Entra for example, and using ABAC, what happens is, okay, you have this little niche use case that you want to give Daniel, you want to give Carol. I have to just go ahead and create a brand new role and then assign Carol a role. Or and then Carol needs a new ability to do it within the app or within another app. And keep in mind, this isn't just for this app. This is for every app inside of your whole entire enterprise. So you might have hundreds of different apps, microservices, APIs that you want to have authorization on, RBAC or otherwise. And you have to distribute that throughout with policy throughout all your apps. So, and then Carol needs all these extra abilities to do in all these different apps. What happens is if Carol stays at the company for a long time, and you'll notice this at a lot of companies that you work at, is you'll have hundreds and hundreds of different roles. Well, Carol's the same person every day. Why don't we just describe Carol and her needs based off of attributes from your attribute sources? As Matt described earlier, we go ahead and leverage identifying information about the user, run that through policy, and go into your attribute sources, already inside your enterprise and leverage additional values there and use that to run through the rest of the policy. So instead of looking through each and every role and saying, what permission does this role have? What permission does this role have? What permission does this role have? Let's say Carol has the create purchase order entitlement. So put this purchase order area in the purchase order page of the app. And if Carol doesn't have the purchase order app anymore, or the ability to create purchase orders, just remove the entitlement. And do that within LDAP. And then have Axiomatics go ahead and check that. And that's just a simple use case, but there's all sorts of different use cases as well. We can do masking over data. We can do, as I can explain that, or I can show that off real quick. For example, if I go and I just bring up our source of truth, and I just switch Daniel's region from the US, from the EMEA to the US, and I remove EMEA from Bob.
So what you're doing right now behind the scenes, Kyle, is you're not giving Bob and Daniel new roles. What you're doing is you're updating their attributes at a central repository.
Exactly.
Basically like updating information within LDAP or SailPoint, wherever the information might be stored. But you're not giving them these new roles.
Exactly. I'm not giving them any new roles. I'm just updating information about them that's in an attribute source. This is our demo attribute source. And for some reason, this part of the demo is not working right now. But what's supposed to be happening is you would see the new supplier, and it would be masked because they're not in the right region. But this demo is still a beta product at the moment, so
that's okay.
Yeah, but basically that you don't want to be creating all these different roles. You can just manage based off attributes, and managing based off attributes is easier and simpler.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite explanations for role-based is think of a new employee, and every employee, as a new employee joins, they basically have this bag, and this bag that they're holding is the roles that they get when they first start at company X, whatever it might be. And more often than not, these roles that are given to them are essentially copied and pasted from coworkers. You know, if Kyle and I work together, part of the same team, effectively the same job title and everything, as I join the company, I would just inherit the same roles that Kyle has, or the same default template that Kyle has. That's great. But the reality is we don't stay at the company in the same role forever. More often than not, we get different roles and responsibilities. We might shift between one department and another. We might get promoted, whatever it might be. But every time that change happens, this bag that you're holding, people don't go back into the bag, pull out roles that are no longer present. They end up just adding more and more roles to who you are, to your bag of roles. And one customer that I was talking to a while back, they basically said that any user who's been with the company for more than 5 years typically ended up with about, on average, 85 roles. That is wild. And to Kyle's point before about the number of roles that a company might have, the other example that I heard was, of a company that was 50,000 employees, there were well over 50,000 roles. I thought that was absolutely mind-boggling. At that point, you might as well have a role called Kyle Wright role and the Matt Luckett role. Everybody gets their own unique, tailored role to guide them through what they have access to. The difference here is with attribute-based access controls, rather than holding this bag of roles that you bring with you everywhere within the company, and it just grows exponentially, all of that information is stored back into that central repository, that database of information, whether it's Active Directory, SailPoint, an actual database, whatever it might be, or even within the applications themselves. All of that information already exists. Rather than a bag of tricks, bag of roles, as the user tries to access purchase orders, as the user tries to approve, what we're doing is we're looking at who they are, we're looking at their attributes where they exist, and at that point in time, we're making sure that they should be allowed or denied access to that information. It really goes back down to that never trust, always verify, zero trust mentality. I don't see any other questions coming in. So on that note, Kyle, back over to you.
Great. Yeah, I actually am going to send it right back to you.
Ah, good.
But we can go back to the slides.
So maybe this is actually probably my second favorite part of the presentation. So we've highlighted the fact that, as the user is making that request, they have their credentials, they have their keys to log into the application, so they're getting access to the application. But at the same time, we're not going to just trust that they are who they say they are. We're going to look at everything that we know about who that user is. So we're looking at all of those attributes about who they are. We're looking at all of their environment variables. We're looking at other technologies, heck, like Workday, to find out, are they working when they're supposed to be working? The device that they might be on might look like the same device, but for some reason they're logging in overseas and they're logging in at 11 p.m. Well, that doesn't really match. So at that point, we might want to deny their access, something simple like that. But what makes Axiomatics really, really powerful and unique is the fact that if we look in the top right corner, it's not just about the one application that the user is working with. At the end of the day, we're working with typically dozens of applications. And all of that information, every request, every permit, every deny against all of those applications is being sent from that policy decision point back to the logging and reporting. And again, what makes this really, really powerful, if we just go one more slide up, that information doesn't just have to reside in a logging and reporting database. That alone is great, because now all of a sudden the NOC team, the SOC team, they're able to come back and say, oh, there's a potential threat, either an insider threat or an outsider threat. But then we can actually start to use that information to update things like user behavior analytics tools, or UBAs, to say we've got this individual who, maybe they're accessing sensitive information at 4 p.m. That looks good. There's no risk in there. But now all of a sudden they're coming in from a new device and it's 10 p.m. and they're not just accessing one sensitive file, they're trying to access multiple sensitive files. All of those user behaviors being sent back to the logging and reporting database can then start to increase and raise that awareness, raise the risk of that user's behavior. And at that point, as soon as they try to access maybe the fourth file, all of a sudden they get shut down their access until 24 hours later, or until the SOC team can then go back and say, yes, this person is who they say they are. They can validate the actions and take steps to protect them.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing I'd like to add is, when you're getting this risk score, for example, from your UBA tools, your user behavior analytics tools, you get this risk score and you're told this user behavior is anomalous and might be a threat. And with Axiomatics, you're actually able to decide exactly a course of action of what you want to do with this newfound information. Axiomatics gives you the tools to actually go ahead and tell your enforcement points exactly what you want to be done. And that's something that is lacking in a lot of other solutions at the moment.
You got it. So yeah, and if we go to the next page, so this is just a really, really quick example. We don't have to spend much time on here, but as I mentioned, it's not about just logging and capturing information against one application. It's really about being able to synchronize and get a more clear picture about what the users are doing against all of the applications that they're interacting with. In fact, this is the last question here is probably one of my favorite ones, which is who is generating the most denies and across how many in which applications. So all of a sudden, this is starting to generate a better picture of who might be a real problem within the business. So kind of just coming back through, summarizing sort of what we've gone through. When it comes to credential theft, social engineering, at the end of the day, credential theft has always been a problem. I remember when I first got into business, you'd walk around and you'd see people with little sticky notes on the side of their computer with their credentials. People have gotten a little bit smarter. You still see it every once in a while, but it means people can still have their information easily attacked or easily stolen. But credentials are basically just the keys to get into the application. The credentials don't say everything about who you are, and of course, unless you're looking at role-based access controls, but it's just the key to get into the application. With Axiomatics, by leveraging everything else that we know about the user, again, not just their attributes, but also their environment variables, all of those details can be used to never trust them and always verify that they are who they say that they are. And kind of following along that, in the situation where you do have that user, they've gotten in, they've gotten their access. What we want to make sure of is that we're able to limit that blast radius. So again, kind of going back to Kyle's point about the scenario of being able to create your own purchase orders, and then approving them. Well, by having that blast radius that isn't limited, all of a sudden what you're doing is you're making it so that that hacker or that insider threat is able to take advantage of those relaxed policies, those easily accessed roles, in order to get more access, more privilege, and effectively hurt the business more. With access that's driven based off of policy or attributes, we're able to quickly and easily coordinate the policies to limit just how much access that user has within the application. Kyle, I'm not sure if there was anything you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to it. So exactly what Matt just said, and also what might happen is, and an insider threat might be, you might look at analytics and see things about current users and see behavior that may look like a threat, or you might have a conversation with the user and be suspicious of something, or, sometimes people get gut feelings about certain users and certain things. Maybe they've just put in their 2 weeks notice. Maybe they just had, a rough couple of weeks or something. You can put, attributes about the user and limit users' access within policy just by talking about logical things about the user and logical things about your environment. So you can write your own policy at any time and update it to, and ideally it would be there in the first place, and you just update the attributes. But these are all things that can be controlled to the finest detail with attribute-based authorization.
Yeah, that is a really good one. Especially the person who's, effectively given their 2-week notice. They've said that, they're going to be leaving, and it happens every single day. But as soon as that person does that, there's a reason why a lot of businesses will say, thank you, we understand, but for the next 2 weeks, don't bother coming in. We're removing your access. They're still getting paid, but because of the risk associated with that individual, they're effectively saying we would rather pay you to not come into the office than to let you continue to work. So what Kyle's saying here is, what we can do is, as soon as that user has been flagged, and again, let's go with the Daniel example. As soon as Daniel gives his 2 weeks notice, all of a sudden what it might do is it flags that information within Active Directory. And as soon as Daniel goes into the purchase order app, he no longer has the ability to approve any purchase orders, as an example, which means that it would end up having to go to Daniel's boss to approve. So it's those simple little abilities to, again, limit that blast radius and make sure that you're able to trust the people who are working within the business. Now, Axiomatics on its own, it is that policy-based access control or attribute-based access control, which gives you more and more confidence that people are who they are that are accessing information. And in that case, you're able to make sure that the right person has the right level of access at the right time. But the reality is there's a lot more technologies involved in order to create that entire cohesive security system, whether it's the identity governance, whether it's the identity threat detection, like the CrowdStrikes of the world, or the UBAs, whether it's other technologies like network level security. All of those different technologies, they're all good, but working together makes it for that more cohesive security approach. Which is why we at Axiomatics find it so important to be able to work with the different vendors in order to create that seamless solution.
Exactly, and we can work with many different vendors all at the same time, and usually even custom solutions or anything we can hook into. We can leverage 99% of all attribute sources and most enforcement points as well. So.
All right. We finished with 15 minutes, so I'm going to just flag the last slide. We are always active. Actually, Kyle, if you just go one more slide. Obviously, the webinars are continuing on a monthly basis. Always happy to be doing these. But we're also going to be going to some upcoming events. We have the European Identity Conference in Berlin next month. And the following month, we're going to be at Identiverse in Las Vegas. We're going to be at booth 438. Always love having people come to the booth, ask us questions. If you don't agree with anything that we've said and you want to have a debate, I love that as well. Let's have that conversation. Otherwise, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today. If you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask in the chat, please feel free to send them over to myself or Kyle. I'm on LinkedIn, as is Kyle. Happy to have that conversation over there as well. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you all.